Hey friends, welcome back. And if you're new here, I'm Prang. Very nice to meet you. Today is Sunday and it is the end of my week 2 of fat loss journey. This week I want to show you something different, mainly because this past week has been quite challenging for me, specifically for sticking with my fat loss phase with my food and eating, and also like mental stress, which I think is worth like addressing and also being so transparent and honest for anyone who's also on the same journey. It's not always easy or it's not always effortless. Maybe it's just me being too harsh on myself. But this week, as I realized that it's probably the gloomiest and the most depressing week in January, struggling with like the winter blue and also not being full and not being able to eat or use food as my kind of medicine is quite tough. So that was me. So if you're struggling with sticking with your healthy eating habits, then this video is for you. This is not going to be an hour long complicated different meals. To me, what I like the most is to have variation and different combination each day for each meal, but at the same time, using the same ingredients throughout the week. So the first thing that I did this morning was to feed my sourdough starter. Say hi to Riley. Riley, say hi to everyone. She's bubbling up nicely, so I reckon that she'll be ready to make a dough in an hour or so. And this is mainly just for the house. I only bake sourdough once every 2 weeks because that is the pace where how we get through each loaf. For some reason, it's like I'm in a protein bowls and protein bar era. So I've been doing like protein bowls like every day and making just only 1 or 2 bowls. And then I thought, come on, this is not sustainable because I have to keep making it for smaller amount. So I just did a bigger bar and then put it on a tray. This week I got some dates as well, so I was like, okay, let's just make something like Snickers protein bar. That could be fun. I didn't follow a particular recipe, if I'm honest, so it turned out to be a bit interesting because the date caramel layer, there's nothing to protect it, so it's quite soft. I put in the freezer and I forgot about it for 2 days. It turned out to be very frozen, so before I cut it, I had to let it defrost it. But obviously once it's defrosted, then the caramel layer gets softened up, and obviously I finished my chocolate, so I didn't have enough chocolate to cover the whole piece. But anyway, it still tastes nice, so I cut that up into 10 servings. I'll probably keep having that throughout the week or even for the next 2 weeks. I found that protein bar sometimes, especially when you have different layers, is very satisfying, very easy to take on the go with me. So those are already done, put in a container back into the fridge. And for the actual cooking that I'm planning to do today is to make the tamarind glazed or tamarind sauce. If you watch my hosting friends vlog, that was the tamarind glaze that I used for tofu. So I still have the tamarind paste left, and I'll basically try to use that up to make into a basically all things sauce, whether I can do it into like a stir fry or like the actual pad thai. So tamarind is a staple ingredient in Thai cuisine, and I used a lot growing up, but I rarely use it living here in the UK. Not because it's not easy to find, because it's very accessible at Asian supermarkets. The only reasons why I don't regularly use it or buy a jar of tamarind paste is because it's so easy to get moldy. Because I made that tamarind pad thai sandwich for friends earlier, I'm feel quite encouraged and positive now to maybe bring tamarind back into my rotation and just find a new and creative ways of using that without just having to stick with traditional pad thai sauce. And to be honest, the pad thai, like the sauce that I made today, it wasn't anything traditional, giving the vibe, just taking some inspiration from the food that I know. And I know that this sauce is gonna brighten up my week the next week, just some more like nostalgic flavors, I would say. And next thing that I prepped today was seitan. I think protein is the most difficult part to get in your daily basis. Whether it's chicken, fish or tofu, protein takes the longest to prep, takes a lot of effort and lots of seasoning into bringing out the flavor of those ingredients. Even for me, I cook a lot with tofu, tempeh and seitan these days, but I still find that sometimes it gets a bit like much having to think about, okay, what's the protein that I want today. Sometimes I'm just gonna throw in fresh tempeh in, not even bother cooking. So for seitan, actually it is pretty hands-off process, and it's actually doesn't take as long to cook, but it can get a bit of a, oh wow, the lighting is different. Seitan can feel a bit like a hassle to make, especially if I have to do it on weekdays. But it's very simple, as I say. All you need is vital wheat gluten, and if you can access that, that's very easy because you don't have to wash the dough to actually extract out the gluten from flour. A tin bean usually use about 125 grams, and this is key to help soften up the texture of seitan. And some seasoning like stock cubes, soy sauce, miso, garlic powder, you have to season it really well. Blend everything up with the beans, pour that mixture into the wheat gluten, kneading for a little bit until everything is incorporated. And then I would rest that for about like 20 minutes for the gluten to kind of develop that kind of spongy, glutinous kind of like texture. And in the meantime, I would boil up the stock water, with some other seasonings as well, like the usual stuff like soy sauce and whatever flavor that you want to add in there, just make sure that's seasoned really well. And then once it's boiled, bring the heat down to simmer, and then cut up the seitans into smaller chunks. It depends on how you prefer it. Some people would make it into a log, wrap it up in foil and then steam. I prefer to just make it into a knot because I find that the texture that it creates kind of feels more like shredded chicken, but not necessarily shredded chicken. That's just my own preference. So I just make into knots. Once the boiling water kind of simmer down, I just add all the seitans into the pan and let it simmer for about 20 to 30 minutes until they're all puffed up. And you can see that, they would kind of double in size. And then that's it. It's either I also keep in a container with its stock, or I just wait until it cools down for a bit and then put in the silicone container and then keep it in the freezer. They keep really well, freeze really well, and when I want to use it, I just defrost it in the fridge overnight, or at room temperature, pop in an air fryer and season in the way that I want it to be. Once I start making my own seitan, I never buy from stores again because I prefer the texture and it's a lot cheaper than buying from store. And now I started making the dough for my sourdough. She's resting out for about an hour, and then I will follow the process of like stretches and folds. But I guess I'll get to bake her on Tuesday or potentially Wednesday. But that's all done and sorted, get it going, so I'm very relaxed now. And in case you're curious about my fat loss progress, so this week is week 2 of my intended 4 weeks fat loss phase. One of the reasons why I'm turning today into my meal prep day for the week is because for the past week I felt quite miserable, if I put it in a very extreme way. And on top of that, my knee pain on my left has gone worse. So I'm struggling with lots of like discomfort as well, and it came to a point where I also couldn't really walk properly, or couldn't walk very fast, or just basically couldn't use my body the way that I supposed or I wanted to be. And that made me feel really, just not great. So on my good weeks, I generally fine with cooking a lot for lunch, for dinner, and every day. That last week wasn't a good week for me, and having to think about cooking and being in the kitchen and spending a lot of time doing something that days after days, like protein bars, I just keep doing it every day, might not be the most efficient ways of using my mental and physical capacity, to be honest. So even though I'm still trying to recover and trying to improve my knees condition, and that came with like adjusting my exercise routine, etc., on the eating side, to kind of keep myself on track and sticking with the healthy eating habits, and also to be able to progress for fat loss, I think a meal prep will be very, very crucial for me. At least have some things there that I don't have to think about it. It just to kind of unload that mental capacity, so then I can free up my brain to think about something else that matters, to focus more about work, to focus more about other things, or even just like that additional stress that I didn't see before. Like partially mental stress can exacerbate physical stress or physical pains as well. So I'm hoping that by doing this meal prep this week will kind of help taking the edge off basically. And also I may or may not influence because I really subscribe to the idea of Lego meal prep, and I've seen people talking a lot. And I think it's such a nice way to reframe meal prepping. It's like it's been there for forever. Like people freezing curries and then freezing soup in this, silicone mold. But the way that people frame it as like Lego, just make it fun, make it very creative and new and exciting. I've already thought about it like a while ago before the whole knee situation happened or has gone worse. But I finally got myself these silicone, even though I don't know what I'm gonna put in here because my meal prep this week is not gonna be like soupy, freezable kind of thing. But I really subscribe to this idea, and that's why I decided, okay, I'm just gonna maybe focusing on or maybe paying attention more on prepping myself and setting myself up for success, and allow myself to be less stressed about food situation. Even if I set myself a timeline for 4 weeks, but that timeline can be flexible. So yesterday I went to Oxford and to see friends for her birthday, and I just didn't think about calories. I didn't think about being in a deficit. I just ate until I was full to prevent me from being a hangry monster. And then as a result, then I had really good time. I enjoyed the pizza, I enjoyed the birthday cake. And tell you what, it's not going to ruin the progress anyway, but the benefit that like the impact for that kind of freedom or mental freedom from yesterday really helped me so much. And then now I feel like I'm ready to go back. I'm ready to basically come back to my own routine and to the whole health and fitness regime. So yeah, I think it's just to kind of, as I guess this is like my short reflection to even if you're on a fat loss, even if you are disciplined, but it doesn't always mean that you have to always be rigid and disciplined. Sometimes allow yourself some flexibility, like being able to enjoy life, being able to maybe relax for a bit, also help to accelerate your progress, because being too restrictive and if it feels miserable, it's not going to do any good for anyone. So yeah, I think that's just kind of my learning for this week. And I hope that if you're on a similar journey, if you're feeling the same, I hope this is just a kind reminder to you that just be kind to yourself, and there's nothing wrong with taking a step back for 1 day or 2 days. It's not going to ruin the progress. In fact, it will basically help you achieve the goals that you set for yourself. So one last thing that I'll be cooking today, maybe not for meal prep, but it would end up being a meal prep anyway. So today, when I'm recording, is Burns Night. So for those who don't live in the UK, Burns Night is just like a day that
traditionally, like from Scotland, that they celebrate some historical event in the past about someone trying to basically burn the White House or some sort of that government parliament, but then
didn't happen.
It's not true. It's not the right one.
Is that the right one?
That was Bonfire Night.
So what is Burns Night?
He's a poet, Scottish poet.
Let's pretend that I didn't say that. What we usually eat on a Burns Night is haggis. So okay, hope that I'm not getting it wrong again, but haggis traditionally is made with pork or like pork blood, but it's essentially like a sausage with like different grains, oats, lentils maybe, and then and usually served with mashed potato and mashed sweet, and then with the creamy whiskey sauce. In the past few years, we usually bought veggie haggis from store, but this year I want to make it myself because why not? It's very simple to make without, making it into a sausage, but just gonna bake in a loaf tin. So that will be my last mission for today. We already got sweet. We're gonna mash this one. So that will be my vegetables that I will continue eating throughout the week as well. It's gonna be lots of cooking, but in a way, they're not quite intense or stressful cooking and recipes. So I'm feeling pretty good about today's meal prep, or more like mini meal prep. The haggis was very good. I'm very pleased that it turned out very well, better than I expected. It was slightly kind of dry at the top, mainly because it was in the oven and not like steam or boil as if you would normally do with a traditional haggis that comes in like a sausage. Yeah, I think Yuan said as well, like it's kind of like meatloaf. So I guess if you live in the US, then this probably haggis probably has like similar idea as a meatloaf. But anyway, it was really nice and very, very filling. And then, the portion size was very good amount of everything, and the tempeh that I added at the end also, very, very yummy. And if I know that, it is this easy to make and, I can batch cook for like, 6-7 portions, I'm probably gonna make more haggis and not necessarily just in January for the burns night. But overall, I'm very pleased about the mini meal prep today. I did a lot actually, and yeah, it was a very productive day. So yeah, right now I'm just gonna have a sweet something to end the night. I'm already in my hoodie, my sleep hoodie, and yeah, just gonna wind down, have an early night, and hopefully I get to start my week strong and energized and no more winter blue. But yeah, thanks so much for joining me today. I hope you have a good week, and I'll see you in my next video very soon. Bye.